information as well.
I don't see chat on mine.
Oh, that's it.
I see chat 5. Somebody I must be in chatted already.
Yeah, if you click on that, it might open up a chat box that you can write things in.
Okay.
I think.
Okay, I got it.
Great, thank you. Okay, and I see that we are recording. So I think with that, I'm going to minimize this. Everybody should be able to see my screen. If not, please let me know. Okay. And we'll let Glenn into the room. Good morning, Glenn. Make this taskbar minimized. Okay, so once again, thank y'all for being here this morning. This is the Region 7 Regional Steering Committee meeting for June 30th, because somehow it's almost July. I'm not sure how that happened entirely. So I'm gonna let Risa take over the next 2 slides, if that's okay.
Of course. So we wanted to remind everyone that these Regional Steering Committee meetings are, of course, adhering to Louisiana open meetings requirements. So they are observable to the public. They will provide an opportunity for public comments. These are an opportunity to increase the public's trust and awareness of the work that our regional steering committees are doing. And it's an importance of transparency and decision tracking that we're providing. We have provided a 24-hour advance notice of this meeting, and we are recording the meeting, and the audiences can provide a recording opportunity on their own ends as well if they'd like. We are recording the meetings for the public record. We will be doing roll call, and as we do that, please let us know if you're an alternate member. This is, of course, a public meeting. We are recording it on our end, and we will be posting the public meeting recording for public viewing afterwards. All comments that are made in that chat are written public comments, including any that are marked as private. They are all public. Comments from the steering committee itself can be made throughout the presentations. Let us know if you do have one to make, whether it is by unmuting your line on the phone or by making it through the chat box. There will be a specific time for public comments at the end of this meeting. Please do use your video camera during the meeting if possible. We would like to see you. If anyone is having technical difficulties, please place a message in the chat pod and we'll let you know how we can help. Thank you.
So if y'all can't tell, Risa may have done that at least once. Thank you. That was really thorough and it sounded scripted. To be honest, like you've got, no, you don't need to apologize. It's like, when I say it sounded scripted, is like, you've got it down and like, this is exactly what it is. So really appreciate your leadership there, Risa. And I know that this would not be, you know, as successful as it has been so far virtually also, and just in general without your leadership. So thank you. And once again, I just want to recognize that, you know, it is 9:30 on a Tuesday. It is early and that we're meeting during a global pandemic and global civil unrest during hurricane season, and we all live in the Gulf. So just really thank you for being here. I know that your mind is probably in many other places before, during, and after this meeting. So just thank you for your time that you're offering today. So today's objectives for the call, I hope that everybody had a chance to review the bylaws and the work plan ahead of the meeting. We will have some time especially to go over the work plan, and I apologize again for sending that out with some last minute edits and changes. I just felt that it was necessary to make those so that it reflected kind of what was actually going on. So today we're going to review with the goal of adopting the bylaws and the work plan as well. And that's also going to mean that we're going to adopt them with the understanding that some things are probably going to change. And then also we're going to elect the chair and vice chair. So kind of keep in mind if that's a role that you might like to fulfill, or if there's somebody on this call who you think would be a good fit for either of those positions. So the overall agenda for today, we are scheduled to go until 11:30 a.m. However, if we end sooner than that, you know, we can either move into a couple of open questions. I know we do have OCD on the call, so we can talk about a couple of those items, if you will, that are not on the agenda, or we can choose to end early. So We'll see if we can get through this agenda ahead of time. We certainly won't keep you after 11:30. So just keep that in mind. So some introductions. We're going to go down from top to bottom, starting with Mike with Ascension Parish, and then go all the way down just to make sure that our regional steering committee members are on here. If you are showing up as an alternate for the individual that's listed, can you please state that? So let's go ahead and start. Do we have Mike Enlow here with Ascension? Or the alternate for Mike Enlow?
Saw Mike join.
Oh, what'd you say, Risa?
Did see him join us. He's on mute at the moment.
Okay, so Mike is on the call. Thank you. And I know we have Tom. I heard Tom earlier. Thank you, Tom. Do we have anybody else from East Baton Rouge Parish? Okay, hearing none. Do we have James Stewart with East Louisiana? Okay, James did say that they had a lot going on this morning. So for everybody who's new on this call, Chuck helped arrange this. James is the brand new floodplain manager for East Louisiana Parish, and Chuck worked really hard to make that connection. So thank you, Chuck. We look forward to introducing y'all to James when he can be here. Do we have John Clark with Iberville? Or John's alternate? Okay. Do we have Mark Harrell with Livingston? Okay. And I think I heard Earl earlier, is that right?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, Earl. Is there anybody else from St. Charles? Okay. And I know we got Major, so good morning, Major.
Good morning.
We have anybody else from St. Helena? Okay. What about Ryan with St. James?
Yes, I saw him on the line.
Great.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning, Ryan. Is there anybody else with St. James on the line?
Nah, just me.
Okay, great, thank you. And Devin with St. John, I think I might have seen you on, is that right? Okay, anybody else from St. John? Okay, and then I know we have Ross, and I think Ross, you got a couple other folks on the line with you, right?
I do. I have Diet Smythe, Don Odell, and Randy Posina from St. Tammany Parish Government as well.
Great, thank y'all for being on today. Do we have Bridget Bailey with Tangibawa? No? Okay, anybody else with Tangibawa? Okay. All right, Bobby Joe Breland, I think I saw you on the line.
I think Alex is on the line for her.
Okay, hey Alex, thank you. What about Gary Migo with West Louisiana? Okay. I know we're not going to have Dietmar today. He has an appointment. And I think we've got Karen on the line, right?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. Thank you for being here. And I know we got Chuck on the line. Good morning again.
Good morning.
And then I know we have Ronnie, right?
Yes. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Ronnie. And am I missing anybody, or did I not call out anybody's name who might have an affiliation with the regional steering committee members, either as a member or as an alternate? Okay.
Are any of those members on by phone only, or does everyone have a computer connection?
Major. I'm
Major,
on by phone.
But Major, you're able to see the screen? On your phone, you're able to see the screen, the items that Rachel's showing on the screen?
I lost connection.
Oh.
Say it again on my phone.
Are you able to see the items that Rachel's pulling up on the screen? Okay.
Great. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I see
Okay.
you have up the introduction right now.
Okay, good.
I'm going in and out sometime.
Great.
that's
And it
okay.
looks like Bridget is just joining us from Tangipahoa, by the way.
Hey, Bridget, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on beyond that. So I think I had the opportunity to talk to every single one of the regional steering committee members one-to-one. And I noticed some patterns. And so, you know, I'm not going to read off every single one of these to y'all, but something that people really talked about were that there were a lot of shared challenges. So our challenges in flooding are similar and also can be similar across the region, but y'all also talked about this being a shared opportunity to really do some work together. There was also, you know, a lot of people brought up, you know, it's beyond just flooding. When things flood, it actually means that it impacts people's quality of life. And then also a lot of people acknowledged people are really smart and they're really resourceful and they've witnessed change over time. So I heard a lot of narratives about individuals who've had conversations with people that live within their jurisdiction or area, and just how through conversations with those folks, they've actually been learning about what some of those changes and impacts have been over time. So just thank y'all again for the time that you gave to me for those one-to-one conversations. And I really hope that that's the beginning of building a relationship between us, and then also starting these relationships and growing relationships with the folks on the steering committee. Here we go. All right, so we're gonna do a quick poll right now. So Risa's gonna pull up a quick poll. This is an introductory poll that has a couple of different questions, and we're gonna guide y'all through those questions. I'm also going to verbally say the questions, but for those of you who are connected where you can see my screen as well, you're gonna see a window pop open on your device. And so then you just click which responses apply to you. So we'll give everybody a couple of minutes to go through these. And I'm going to say them out loud. If you feel more comfortable putting your response in the chat box, that's fine as well. So the first question is, how long have you lived in the parish where you live? For those of you providing a response in the chat box, you can feel free to put the number in there. And for those of you doing the poll, the options are up to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, 10 to 15, 16 years or more, or my entire life. The second question is, my roles include, and you can click all that apply, a certified floodplain manager, a coastal zone manager or administrator, professional engineer, emergency coordinator / manager, planner, professional geologist, concerned citizen / community representative, or elected official. And if you feel like you may also have another role that's not listed, you can put that in the chat box as well. The third question is, have you collaborated with other members of the regional steering committee before becoming co-committee members together? And it's just simple yes or no. And the final question, did you have a nomination in mind for chair or vice chair before attending today's meeting? Yes, no, or I'm interested in serving in one of these roles.
Hopefully these questions are not that hard. We'll see.
I don't know, in COVID world, I feel like even simple things for me are sometimes challenging. And I'm gonna say that so that maybe y'all give me a little grace at times, I guess.
So we had a little technical difficulty at the launch of this poll. So if you answered it and it disappeared, please go ahead and re-answer it, because that meant it had to be relaunched, okay? And this poll is meant for the members of the steering committee themselves.
Thank you for that clarification, Lisa.
So can I press
if you're
submit
here-
now?
I'm sorry, Tom?
Can I press submit now? Are you?
Yes, once you complete your answers, click submit. And if
All
you're
right.
here as an alternate for someone, please do submit your answers.
let's see, and we have 16 of the 30 have answered or responded. I think that's about in alignment with who we have on the line. That's a regional steering committee member. So I'll give everybody, you know, like maybe 10 more seconds just to go ahead and respond. And then we can end this poll.
I'm seeing Karen has a question about submitting the poll. Risa, do you know if there's something that's maybe blocking the submittal?
Karen, did it allow you to go ahead and submit now? Shouldn't be any reason.
Still nothing. I can type it in chat to you though.
Okay.
That would be great. Thank you, Karen. And sorry about the technical difficulties. You know, I think COVID world, we're just doing what we can with the technology, and sometimes it doesn't like to cooperate. So we'll have to look into why that might have happened. That's interesting.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that, y'all. I think that may have been my fault. I was looking at it and trying not to submit, and I think I turned it off momentarily. I'm sorry about that.
I was like, what happened?
That's okay. We're all learning. I'm laughing because I've done something similar to that in the past. Yep. Wow, we have a lot of folks who have most certainly lived in excess of 10 years. 7 of y'all have lived in that parish your entire life. So thank y'all for bringing your.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and share the results to everyone. Here we go.
Thank you. Wow, yeah, a lot of folks have lived in the same parish their entire life. So thank y'all for bringing your wisdom and knowledge. We have a lot of folks who serve a lot of different roles. You wear many hats, I'm sure. We've heard that quite a bit. And kind of almost a halfway split between have worked with other steering committee members before and have not. So for those of you who came with a nomination of mine and who are interested, please speak up whenever we come to the time for those nominations. And for those of you who are in the no category, maybe kind of think if there is somebody who you think might be a good fit, including yourself, that's also okay. So thank y'all for doing that brief introductory poll with us. These are going to be things that are helpful for us to just kind of know who y'all are. And then also so that y'all can kind of know who's in the room as well. Oh, go ahead. Oh, were you saying something, Major? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to stop our share results, exit out of that. All right, thank you, Risa, for facilitating that. My slides have frozen. Here we go. Okay, so I am going to start sharing the bylaws with y'all. So we're going to get through this as we can. Thank you for those of you who submitted comments ahead of time. I think what we are going to, what I've been thinking about doing with this group is doing this in 2 parts. So we have part 1, which is the background and purpose. So that's kind of just the high level overview. And then the second part is the bylaws, which I think is where we're going to get nitty gritty, where there's probably going to be more discussion. So we might move to adopt part 1 and then part 2. Let me see on a grid view. Does that sound okay to folks that are on this call? If you can just give me a thumbs up if you're on your camera, or say yes in the chat.
Yes.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, great. I see some thumbs. I'm hearing yeses. I'm also seeing yeses in the chat box, and I think, okay. Does anybody object to doing it that way?
No.
Okay. So I'm not hearing anything to suggest otherwise. So we are going to move through this in that way, and I'm going to be making edits directly in this document. Okay, so let's scroll down here. Okay, is this, I think this should be big enough for everybody. I'll make it just a little bigger. just because I know that I can see things up well, or up close pretty well, but not far away. Okay, so the background, like I mentioned, this is a basic overview of kind of how this came to be. You know, it says that there's 5 state agencies, and then there's the Council on Watershed Management. It lists out the agencies, and then it shows the regional map. Does anybody have any comments or concerns or edits or anything that they want to make to this particular section?
No, I don't.
Okay, so I'm not hearing anything on that. I'm gonna scroll down. Oh, let me see in the chat. Thank you, Ronnie. Okay, so it lists out the parishes that are in Region 7, and it says that Region 7 may, or the Regional Steering Committee may also be referred to as RSC, is body comprised of designated individuals who represent individual parishes or the region as a whole. So we have 13 parishes, so we have 13 parish representatives, and then we have 4 regional representatives. So we go on to say that through the implementation of this program, we want to more effectively address statewide flood risk, specifically in Region 7. These dollars through HUD, through the Community Development Block Grant Program, will be used for the following things and activities for the Regional Steering Committee. And that's adopting an annual work plan, which we're going to talk about today. That is providing input in the development and implementation of a longer term coalition. So it's the governance structure and model that we've also talked about in the past, and that we will continue to talk about. That's developing a regional watershed project inventory and participating in the selection of round 1 projects totaling up to $5 million. And this committee will dissolve. This deadline has actually been moved back. So based on COVID-19, the updated guidance and procedures now say that it can be a full year. So it'd be late spring for us. So the end of May. So I'm gonna make a comment there, if that's okay. Okay, does anybody have any thoughts, comments, ideas on the rest of that section? I'm seeing some no's. Okay, and I'm not hearing anything. So I'm gonna move beyond the background and into the purpose. This is still the part 1 of the document, if you will. The purpose is very small. It's very succinct. So it's basically just saying that this committee is here to provide guidance on project policy and programs that advance regional coordination. Does anybody have any thoughts, comments, ideas on this section for purpose? Okay. Not hearing anything. Does somebody maybe want to, oh, go ahead. Okay, maybe that was just some feedback. Y'all heard a little bit of my Midwestern come out because I said "ope," which is like this funny Midwestern thing. So thank you, Major Nunn. Thank you, Ronnie Nunn. Does somebody want to move to maybe adopt part 1 of this document?
I'll make that motion.
I second that.
Let me see. I heard Major, and maybe was that Ross?
It was Ross. Sorry about that.
Great, thank
And
you.
I appreciate the work, put into this document. So very well done. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, and we got Gary now. There we go. Good morning, Gary. Okay, so I think that carries then. So we had Ross specifically make that motion. Major seconded. Is there anybody who is opposed?
I had a question.
Yeah.
This is Bridget. We have at the top under the, not purpose, but the first section, it says adopting an annual work plan. My question there is, when we say annual work plan, how frequently, if it's for 1 year only, is it going to be time set that every January we would have it would have to be reintroduced or updated or tweaked, or anything that would want to be added for the next year would need to be done by a certain date? So I just had a question about the wording saying annual work plan. What would be the time frame? Like if we were going to lay that out for introducing new options to be put to it 9 months before it would be adopted. So you'd have 3 months to review it as a group. That would be my question.
Yeah, that's a really great question, Bridget. And I think based on the sense that I have is that maybe this can be more of a living document. So I think, yeah, and I mean, so you said yes to that. Do you think that there's maybe any amended language that you might want to make a recommendation or a motion?
Well, with
for?
it being that it's for the steering committee and we're only supposed to be active for 1 year, I don't know if really annual would be the right word. Maybe it's just adopting a fluid work plan would be a better way of capturing that. That way it doesn't specify that it is only for 1 year. And we know that the coalition is pretty much the outcome of what we really want to see. And then I think in whatever bylaws we have for a coalition, we need to have the language that talks about annually it would be reviewed, but not necessarily for this new regional steering committee.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Bridget, and I really appreciate you bringing that up. So maybe the language changes to adopting a fluid work plan instead of adopting an annual work plan, and the coalition's kind of where we would have that annual review, and we can talk about that as a part of what is in that overall governance structure recommendation that is due November 30. Does somebody want to make a move to adopt this particular language in here, and then second?
I'll move to make the recommendation.
I move.
Perfect.
This is Earl. You got your second.
Great. Thank y'all. Does anybody oppose? Okay, hearing none. It sounds like that is what we are going to do in terms of that language. Does somebody want to make a movement to adopt section 1 or part 1, excuse me, part 1 as a whole, with the understanding that we make this change?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and just make that motion again.
Great, thanks, Russ.
I'll second it.
Comments. So yeah, that was great. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, anybody oppose or have additional comments? Okay, great. And thank y'all for being so actively engaged. I know that this is more housekeeping, this is administrative stuff. It's not necessarily the fun part of the work, so thank y'all for just doing your due diligence and being part of this. So part 1 is out of the way. Now we get into part 2 for the bylaws. And I think what I'm going to do here is we'll go by each part, and I'll see if anybody has any comments, recommendations for changing language. And then there are some highlighted sections where I think are probably going to have some more robust discussion. So we'll start with section 1 of part 2 on open meeting laws. This isn't really something that we can change. I mean, I think we all know on the phone that this is required by law. But does anybody have any thoughts, suggestions, ideas for any of the language that's in section 1? Okay, I'm hearing none, so I'm going to move on to the next section of part 2. Oh, there was actually more. I apologize. So let me scroll down here. Okay, any edits, comments, thoughts, ideas on this particular section? So essentially this is saying somebody can make a comment on the agenda by, and that can be requested at the discretion of the chairperson. That's a public comment. You state your first name, remarks are 3 minutes, which is pretty typical. Statements are directed to the committee and not a specific member. Any person who's been recognized to speak on an agenda shall reserve their comments to matters that are strictly relevant to the specific item. You know, please be respectful. We don't tolerate harmful language. And if an organization wishes to address a committee, then they need to select one person as its spokesperson. Any comments on this section? Okay. So duties and responsibilities. This is specifically for our regional steering committee members. So the highlighted part, I think, is where we're going to have more robust discussion. Does anybody have any thoughts, ideas, comments, recommendations for language overall? Looks good. Thank you, Major.
The duties
Okay.
and responsibilities.
Oh, what'd you say, Major?
We at the duties and responsibilities section.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. On the failure to attend the 3 consecutive meetings without an explanation. So if your alternate is there, would that constitute a missing a meeting for the full member?
I'm reflexively thinking no, but I would be curious to know what the thoughts of the steering committee members are.
I wouldn't think so. It says or their alternates. So
Alternates, yeah.
they should be allowed to send an alternate.
Okay, perfect.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, y'all. You know, and I think if there's some major emergency or something comes up, just please communicate that with me, and then we can kind of work through that as well. So.
Hey, Rachel, is there a way where we can maybe add that, or anyone designated, just in case like myself, alternate couldn't make the meeting, we could have somebody else just actually monitor and report back to us.
Absolutely. Okay, does anybody want to move to add that particular language?
I'll make that in the form of a motion if anybody wants to second it.
I'll second it.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Gary. Are there any other general thoughts, ideas, comments, recommendations for language on section 2 of part 2, duties and responsibilities? Okay, I'm not hearing any, so I'm going to move down to the composition, which is short. So it's composed of 1 representative from each of the 13 parishes. And then we also have 4 regional representatives. So that's the 17 total. Each representative must designate an alternate to stand in for them if they are unable to attend a meeting. It sounds like most folks agree with that. I would be curious to know if anybody wants to change this language or maybe talk about adding in or anyone designated to this language. Anybody else thoughts?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say just keep it consistent, you know, from one section to the other. So just clean up language. But I think that's fine.
Okay. So add the or anyone designated?
Just for consistency, I think probably make the most sense.
Perfect. Great. All right. Can we, somebody want to make a motion for adding that language?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it then. Just make
Ross and Major, y'all are making quite the team here. Cool. So I think we'll adopt that in then. And if I'm fumbling through Robert's rules, I apologize. It has been years for me. So please know that this is also a learning opportunity for me. And if I'm doing a part of this wrong because I've forgotten, please know that I welcome any corrections. Do we have any other feedback, comments, thoughts, ideas on section 3 of part 2?
Section 3.
Yep,
I think our quorum is defined in section 6 instead of 5.
Oh, can you say that one more time, Major? It cut out.
In the section 3 organization and structure, it says defined, your quorum is defined in section 5, and it's defined in section 6.
Ooh, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Perfect. Okay, so I think the biggest part in this is that we're gonna have a chairperson and a vice chairperson, and they will serve as the presiding officer at each meeting. And if the chairperson is not there, then the vice chairperson will serve that role. Does anybody have any thoughts, ideas, comments, suggestions on section 4, organization and structure?
Rachel, I think it may be important for us to reference, well, we do have secretary. And I just want to make sure that we have that at the top part as well, where it says the committee shall appoint. I didn't know if maybe we just needed to line out that we'll have a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. I do know at the bottom it says that CPRC will actually provide one. I just didn't want to miss that in the in this section 4 under organization and structure, that there will be someone that's the note taker, and maybe we just need to have a little more information about what the secretary's responsibilities will be, because we do have that lined out for chair and vice chair, but it just says that it'll be one provided, but it really doesn't say what the rules will be in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. So specifically, secretary on our end, so I think that's kind of the role that Lindsay, who is one of our summer interns, is playing for this go around. So she will be taking the notes. So I'm going to add recommend. And I do want to ask this group, right now we have that as the responsibility of CRPC. Is that a role that you think somebody on the regional steering committee member on the regional steering committee should fill, or do you all think that having CRPC continue to fill that role makes more sense?
I think it's fine with having CRPC fill that role. I just wanted to make sure that we had more or less some of the duties lined out as to what the expectations would be for that particular position.
I agree, Major. I agree.
Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, Major. Anybody else have any thoughts on that in particular?
Just based on how busy we all are, including, y'all. I mean, I appreciate the help as, in that regard, as far as providing a secretary role and clerk. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're here for. And welcome, Heidi. Okay, so how does it sound if I can write up a description and then I'll highlight it in the bylaws, and the next time that we meet, we can kind of, we can make sure that that's the right language. But today the goal is to adopt with the understanding that there will be changes made. So does it sound okay if I try to type up this description on some of those duties, which will be taking notes, making sure that they're sent back to me so that I can send them back out to y'all, and also so that they are in a format that can be accessible online?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I have no problem with that.
Okay, cool.
I agree.
Perfect. Does somebody want to make a motion to just adopt or to add that description on secretary duties?
I so move.
I'll go ahead and provide that second for you.
Telling you, Major and Ross, what a team here. Thank y'all. And thank you for pointing out that it was section 6 and not section 5. And it might actually be section 7 now, because I realized that it didn't keep counting. So it's actually section 7 now. Perfect. Okay, any more thoughts or comments on section 4, organization and structure? I hear some beautiful birds, but I'm not hearing any comments, so I'm going to move on.
Probably my birds. I'm sitting outside.
I love it. I really do. It's preferable to the silence, in my opinion. Okay, so conflict of interest. So regional steering committee members are subject to the Louisiana Government Code of Ethics and HUD conflict of interest rules and should not participate in any discussion, deliberation, or voting on matters prohibited under those provisions. I do have, it was an attachment, I think, to the rules and procedures that were sent out by OCD, and I can make sure that everybody has the full description for conflict of interest, but are there any thoughts or comments on that?
No, I didn't see it.
Yeah, and you would not have seen that full description. I'm gonna actually remove that attachment from those policies and procedures and send that out to the group. And I just wrote it down on my little to-do notepad. So y'all would not have seen that in full detail yet.
Hey, this is Earl. As long as you keep it by reference, they tweak something, make a change, then you should have us covered.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. That sounds good to me. If that sounds good
And
to
Rachel, I'm sure everybody knows this, but just chiming in, you know, if you ever have a question about conflicts of interest, or you're not sure if something is, or you just want to kind of think through an issue, we can always support with that too. We have a process for it within OCD. So just want to make sure y'all know that you have that resource.
Yeah, thank you very much, Evelyn, for bringing that up. And Evelyn has also told me in the past, and I think that was Gary that might have, were you about to say something, Gary? No? Okay, maybe it was just feedback. But Evelyn did say that, you know, she just mentioned that process. So if, for example, your alternate needs to be a, like an engineer that is hired for your parish, then just let us know, get in contact if you think that it'll be a conflict of interest, because they might also be bidding for implementation of projects, for example, or something of that nature. Just let us know, and we can help guide through that process.
Okay, this is Major. So what each one of us have to take the ethics class, since we have to abide by the Louisiana Government Code of Ethics?
I'm going to toss that to OCD.
That's a great question. We should double check on that. I'm sure many of y'all probably have because of the nature of your employment. But that's a good question, and we should look into that. I'll see if I can get an answer on that.
And I have that written
Being
in
a
here.
state worker and being a state worker and an engineer, I already have to take 2 ethics classes. So
I think it's likely that you would, but I don't want to assume that 100% across the board unless I double check. So great question.
Yeah, and I think you're probably covered, Chuck. If you, at least I would hope so.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that if you already took it for your job, that like you've already done it, right? That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Well, I was an elected official until January, so I think I took it last year. So I probably have to take it again. I don't know. That's why I asked the question.
I'm following you. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
This is Ryan. I think it's fine the way it's written. It says that you're governed by those rules. If somebody wants to take the ethics class, let them take it. But most of us should be taking it anyway. But as it's defined, it says that you fall under the rules whether you took the class or not. So I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll follow up with Evelyn and just make sure that there's no, like that there's not any type of a rule or regulation that states that folks who are on steering committees or something, like, you know, we'll just make sure with the legal team. And then I'll follow up with folks just to make sure that if they do have to take it, if that's a requirement, we'll make sure that folks get access to that class virtually. Yeah, that was a great question, Major.
Hey, this is Earl. So we deal with lots of boards and committees, and with the boards and committees, they have to take them also. So I'm assuming this one would fall under that. But like I said, if you do it by reference, then you
Okay. Thank you for bringing that wisdom into this space. Since you've done this multiple times, having that is really valuable. Okay, cool. So this is a to-do for Evelyn and I. And we'll make sure well, specifically, I'll make sure that I'm closing the loop with y'all, and we'll get that done as soon as possible, while also being mindful of people's capacity. Are we okay to move on from conflict of interest with the understanding that Evelyn and I have a follow-up to do?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
yes, please.
Great. Okay. So procedural rules. This is essentially just kind of how we're going to conduct business in these meetings, which is through Robert's Rules of Order, which I have been attempting and maybe have been fumbling over slightly during this whole meeting, which is fine. And it, that we have to do things in accordance with Louisiana Open Meetings Law, which is stated in a previous section. At any meeting, only members of the meeting or their alternates, if they're present, may vote. I think those are probably the largest concepts in this section. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments on section 6?
No.
Great. All right. I'm going to move on to section 7, which I know Tom had actually submitted some comments to me yesterday, in particular around quorum. So maybe we can start there and then kind of see what everybody else thinks as well. So Tom in his comment had recommended 2/3 instead of 75%, and that's specifically if when we have that minimum quorum present, then it would be a 2/3 instead of a 75% majority vote. If we do have more than those 9 attendees, then it would be the regular majority votes. So half or more. Does anybody have any thoughts? And Tom, if I didn't do a good job of explaining that, please feel free to step in, or if you have anything to add.
No, you did fine. It's just that as you read it, I think as the number of people attending the meeting gradually decrease, you don't need to go from 10 people present to 9 people present and suddenly be harder to reach a majority than you did with 10. Because just say 75%, when you go down and you only have 9 people there, all of a sudden you got to get 7 votes, whereas if you had one more person there, you only needed 6. It's just a mathematical thing. I believe it should be changed to 2/3 so that it would remain 6 votes even with 9 people.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Does anybody have?
I don't know where the 75% came from, but it's just a mathematical calculation that needs to keep it smooth.
Yeah, the 75% came from, frankly, Kim and I's brains, just as a splat on the wall to see what people thought. It was a conversation starter. Does anybody have any thoughts about having it be 2/3 instead of 75%, or perhaps a different percentage?
I'd make a motion to have it 2/3.
2/3.
Break
I
it.
agree.
Yeah, 2/3 makes more sense.
Second, if there was a motion from Ryan.
It was. Thank you, Russ. Okay, so we are going.
Thanks to Tom as well.
Yeah, thanks to Tom for doing the math on that, especially. I did not even think about that whenever we thought 75, so it makes a lot of sense. Oh, let me see what we have in there. Thank you. Major, I see you say you're okay with that. Okay, are there any objections to adding or to having it be 2/3 instead of 75%? Okay, I'm not hearing any. So Are there any other thoughts or comments on section 7 that is related to quorum? Okay, not hearing any. So section 8, approval and amendment to bylaws. This is just saying that we can revisit these as needed, but it has to be approved by a majority vote of the members. Does anybody have any comments or thoughts on this particular section? Approval and amendment to bylaws. Not hearing any. We will move to dissolution. And so, like I said in the beginning, this is actually so that we can have a full year, and because of the update to the policies and procedures based on COVID-19, this is kind of a May-ish, so late spring into early summer timeline instead of spring 2021. So I can update that language. The section 9 dissolution states that will only exist until that late spring into early summer unless otherwise extended by OCD. So this is one of those items that can change based on really kind of how the rest of the timeline unfolds based on COVID-19, based on things that come down from HUD, and based on things that come down from OCD. Does anybody have any comments or thoughts on section 9 dissolution?
Yeah, I do. I actually am on a different, I'm also on a different steering committee. And they had did their dissolution triggered off of the signing of the contract with HUD. And I don't know if that's, totally necessary, but it's something we maybe should consider.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about that, Earl? What you mean by on signing the contract with HUD?
Well, it was the whole timeline is based on that contract, right? And it seemed to me, instead of setting particular dates, it was set up like, and I'm forgetting the exact timeline, but it was like upon the signing of the contract with HUD, it's 6 months to this, 12 months to this, 18 months to this, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. What are some thoughts that people or reactions that people have to that?
I don't know.
I think the current language for the dissolution is pretty, I'd say it's vague, but in a good way, because it allows for movement as the committee needs to. So it's as required by OCD, regulations and dictates of the grantor and HUD. I think it's kind of wide ranging, which I think we need at this time, but again, those are just my thoughts.
My thoughts, as long as we get enough time to do our job. That's all.
Well, we could just put that in here. We just need enough time to do our job. So
Yeah.
until the work is done.
Right.
Hey, this is Barbara Jo. Can we also add where it says unless otherwise extended by OCD or requested by the committee?
Oh, what are some thoughts on that?
I kind of like that.
Earl, which region was the other language from? Was that region 6? Which region was that?
I don't know. I'm associated with 3 of them, so I think it was 6. Yeah. Now I'm not suggesting that that's a better way to do it. I was just mentioning it because I saw it that way, so I wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah, thank you, Earl. So I'm going to kind of wrap what I'm hearing, which I'm hearing is that this needs to be flexible. And the reason why it needs to be flexible is because a lot of our timeline is contingent on really when we do have that line of credit established with HUD. So maybe we can say this committee shall exist only until, so maybe what we can do is find a way to say this by kind of taking this timeline out. in saying that it's within a certain time period of signing that contract, and then also this comma, unless otherwise extended by OCD or requested by the committee.
Maybe it could be something in the nature of, you know, putting your timeline down that you have and saying something unless required by, well, I guess you kind of said that, and unless you're required by some outside force, I guess is the way it would be. You know what I mean? Like the contract to HUD would be an outside thing, but I guess that would come through OCD too, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so the other thing covers it. Sorry.
Okay.
Yep.
No, that's okay.
So do
Okay.
will we have the ability to change the timeline as a committee? Will we have that authority? I'm just asking a question. If we request it, it's still OCD's authority to either accept or reject.
Yeah, I think I'm going to toss that question to OCD, if that's okay.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And I see where you're coming from with that, because like the terms of the grant do specify to some degree like the phases of this timeline. But I think, you know, I don't see any reason why like OCD wouldn't be receptive to the needs of the region if the timeline needs to change. You know, like I think that's one of the goals here is that with COVID as we've experienced, or with any other kind of that come up, we want to be responsive to the needs of the region. So if that means like formally amending, you know, program timelines as appropriate, I could see that happening. I mean, I think, you know, the reason why some of the timelines are a little bit prescribed from the state's perspective is just to ensure that the program is effective, right? But the goal isn't to speed up work unnecessarily, right? Or put anybody in a time crunch. So I think that it's definitely a conversation between the two. And I don't imagine it would be a problem, you know, if this group says, okay, we've done a lot of this work, but we need a little bit more time to make a couple decisions. I think that doesn't mean you're like out of alignment, you know, like I think there are ways to adapt to that. So I think you're right, like leaving it, you know, having some sort of reference in there that is a trigger to extend your timeline if needed, I think would be the safe way to do it.
Thank you, Evelyn, for providing that clarification. Okay, so it seems like this section needs just a little bit of work. So this committee shall exist only until, you know, essentially a year after we started meeting, unless otherwise extended by OCD or requested by the committee as required by OCD acting pursuant to the rules, regulation, and dictates of the grantor in the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, with the intention that it will be replaced by a permanent entity. Does that sound in alignment with what we've been talking about?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to need to do a little bit of work on this language, but do we maybe want to move to adopt that this will be something that is loose in terminology, and that we are also going to add unless requested by committee after extended by OCD to the language?
So somebody else was saying, so I think that's fine.
Okay. Perfect. Does somebody want to move to adopt that?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
That's surprising.
Are there any objections to that? Okay, not hearing any. All right, so the last part, and there's like a weird formatting thing here that I'm going to make a note of so that I can fix it, but this is just a post-written certification advising that we, if we are unable to meet in person. Basically, we have to fill out attachment A. So as long as we are meeting virtually, you will see this attachment, which I'm going to scroll down. This will be on CRPC's website. It will have to be filled out ahead of every single meeting. So essentially what this says is that in order to reduce the spread of COVID-19, we aren't necessarily like having large public gatherings in a single place. So it's okay if we meet virtually. Does anybody have any thoughts, comments on section 10?
Nope.
None from me. I mean, we've been using stuff like this for our public meetings since, March 13th or so, just to do virtual. I think it's pretty standard language.
Cool. Okay. So those are the bylaws, y'all. Do we want to make a motion to adopt part 2, this section, with the understanding that the changes that we discussed will be made?
I'll make the motion.
I'll
Thank you,
second.
Major.
I'll second.
Oh, and I think I might have heard Bobby Joe and Chuck on a second. Thank you, I think. All right, are there any objections? Okay, I'm hearing none. So thank y'all for sitting through that, what I hope wasn't too painful of a process. Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna make sure that this is saved. I'm gonna actually close out of it. And I will make sure that those updates are made and that they're sent out to everybody as soon as possible. So now the work plan. Thank y'all for kind of just bearing with me and letting me send out the updated timeline to everybody. There were, last week there was just some information that I was made aware of that I think meant that things on the timeline needed to change. And I thought that was more important to go ahead and change it and have it be what we reviewed today, instead of trying to just really fit a circle into a square hole, if you will. So everybody should have this in an Excel format. If you have the PDF, which is downloadable from the website, you can zoom in to be able to see this better. Because I understand that this is very tiny. So we're gonna break it down. What we're gonna do is look through this in terms of sections. And I'm gonna take notes for any adjustments that we might need to make. We're gonna go through some of these items in greater detail. And then we'll kind of make motions to adopt piece by piece based on how this is broken down. Does that sound okay?
Okay.
Okay. Perfect. All right, so I wanted to point out some draft work plan key dates. So October 31st is when we need our preliminary regional watershed project inventory. And that is something that's going to be a living project inventory, if you will. So that can continue to be added on over time. And I have the link to that, so I'm going to be sending that out and some follow-up notes to y'all. I'm going to make a note of that. By November 30th, we also need to determine the Watershed Coalition governance structure. And so that's really like submitting a recommendation for the direction that y'all think we ultimately need to go. And one thing that I wanted to correct, so I've had some conversations with people where I've said that the recommendation for the round 1 projects needs to be October 31st. That was incorrect. So I apologize for that. It's actually fall, winter, sometime in between there. And it's one of those things that is contingent on the HUD funding. And I have Evelyn on the line here. If you can speak a little bit more to that and that piece of the timeline, that would be great.
Sure. And Rachel, you're absolutely right to assume that we wanted to do that in the fall, in October. It's just that we're waiting on this grant agreement, as y'all know, which like incrementally delays everything as it takes longer, with respect to round 1. And so, I think all of us working on this appreciate trying to get that piece done as quickly as possible. It's just that we have these external, factors. To that point, I think we've gotten a lot of questions that show that people are really making sure to monitor the round one program as it progresses, which is smart. So, you know, I think everybody on this group is probably already getting the Watershed Initiative emails, but in case you're not, you may want to sign up to do that. And I can send you a link, Rachel, like to include in your notes for how to sign up for that. You know, you want to monitor the website, but rest assured that once we get that grant agreement, which means we can launch the next components of the round one program, we'll let everybody know, right? That's not going to be something that's not widely publicized. So, you know, we're going to keep you in the loop on that. But unfortunately, the delay in the grant agreement means everything else gets pushed back, including project, you know, selection and those conversations that you're having about how you're going to prioritize projects, which is that last item that you're seeing here, the recommendations for round one projects. So if y'all have questions during this conversation about that process, just let me know. That's what we're here for.
Great. Thank you, Evelyn. And apologies again for, you know, I'm going to take ownership over that. I was wrong in saying that it was October 31st. So it is not October 31st for the recommendation for round one projects. That is more, you know, kind of amoeba-like, if you will. It's very nebulous. Okay. And so I think with that, I just wanted to share a couple of, maybe slides have frozen. So there are some realities of the timeline, right? And we've kind of talked about this. Some things cannot move forward until the action plan is approved by HUD. Deadlines may be movable. So I think Evelyn spoke to this earlier in response to Major's question about whether or not we could, as a regional steering committee, actually kind of suggest to move the deadline. So they might be movable based on what the needs of this regional steering committee are and based on how it's been identified. The work plan, oh, go ahead.
You know what, Rachel, just one thing I want to make sure to clarify. The action plan itself is approved. You know, we were lucky that we got HUD's attention on that before coronavirus. So that step actually, you know, was done, I think in February was when that was approved at, you know, the final. You know, after that point, HUD has to like give you a formal grant agreement so that you can get your line of credit so that you can actually start expending funds. And so it's like a two-step process, and that's what we're in between right now. And then, you know, I'm sure if we weren't also going through, you know, hurricane season and a pandemic, probably a lot of these steps would be faster, right? But we have these other factors that I think have slowed that last step in the process. So just want to make sure everybody is aware.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that correction there, Evelyn. So it is, the action plan has been approved. Apologies for my misspeaking there. So it is until there's a formal grant agreement established with HUD. So the slides have been updated to reflect that as well. We'll just make sure that folks know that. The work plan, and I think Bridget, you brought up a really good point earlier, is that this is going to be something that's going to be updated over time, just based on how things change. So those are some of the realities. All right, so moving into the work plan itself, May 21st, we are already done. Did that, here we are, June 30th, already done with that. So July, what we kind of have on deck is the CSRS team, which also includes Arcadis, is going to be working with OCD and myself on developing a risks, vulnerabilities, priority solutions workshop. I know that seems kind of ambiguous and vague at this point in time, but essentially what that is, and you can go online and see what the meetings have looked like for Region 4. They have went through this presentation, but it's meant to be an overview of flood risk across the region, as well as some other vulnerabilities that might exist. And so that's kind of what's on deck for July 28th. And then we'll also have an intro to that project inventory tool. Slide over into August through December. in this vision, values, and priorities for Region 7, I've had a lot of conversations with folks about how it's really good for us to think about, we know that the state has a mission statement itself, so how are we thinking also about where this region wants to be, next year, the year after, based on that mission statement, and what are the values that can also help ground us as we begin to have discussions about projects and that round 1 project recommendation once that line of credit is established with HUD. And then also grounding back into that vision and those values in the context of that mission statement for the regional governance structure as well. So that's kind of between this August, September timeline, possibly July, but it just kind of depends on the timeline. August through November, we're going to really also be focusing on getting some good information on what that regional governance model is going to be. So what that kind of looks like. And if you have the Excel file, you'll see on the second tab, there's a tab called deliverables, and that's going to actually bring out what are some of those deliverables from CSRS as well as the LSU team that's on the line. That's actually going to be providing support for us being able to have the information that we need to put together a recommendation that's in alignment with what y'all are thinking. So that's going to include something like a briefing book. And so essentially it'll say, these are the entities that have some type of authority. Here's maybe where some gaps are. Here's kind of how those entities work and operate. And so it's us trying to really understand, okay, what already exists out there? What are the gaps that can be filled? And what are some ways that there might be some complementary work that's done by this coalition? August through December, we're also going to be working on that project inventory in the round 1 project recommendation. So that's essentially going to be putting in some projects, which I have a link for y'all to send out with a couple of key points, if you will. And then also discussing the round 1 project recommendation. And that's very ambiguously fall, winter 2020. Does July through December sound okay to everybody on this call? Are there any questions?
For me.
That's good. Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion to adopt, I guess, 2020 on the work plan?
I'll go ahead and make the motion.
This is Earl. I'll second.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you, Earl. Does anybody have any objections? Okay, I'm hearing none. So we're going to move on to 2021, which hopefully is very different than 2020 for everybody's sake. All right. So January to May. This May kind of just reflects it's a year after we've already started meeting. So essentially January through February, after we have made that recommendation for the regional governance structure, and we have also submitted the round 1 project recommendation, there might be some things that we need to do kind of in between the stand up of that coalition and after we make that recommendation. So there's really, some policy alignment analysis that should be done. Capacity building. This is where if y'all say every parish needs to have a resolution, we would be doing that during this time. If there's a nomination process, this would also take place during this time. And then if there's any legislation that needs to be submitted for the state legislative session in spring of 2021, this is also kind of that prep time for that moment in time. And then after that, we are most certainly going to celebrate before we dissolve as a committee, because I think that y'all will have put in a lot of work, and we definitely need to also celebrate these moments in time, because the work is long and it's hard and it's difficult, and it's certainly a marathon, but that doesn't mean that we can't celebrate once we get to mile 3. Does anybody have any thoughts, ideas, or comments on 2021? Okay, I'm not hearing any. Does somebody maybe want to make a motion to adopt 2021? Oh, go ahead.
I'll make that motion.
Great, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ross. Are there any objections? Okay, I'm hearing none. Oh, go ahead, Evelyn.
Oh, this is not an objection. Sorry, just a
That's okay.
just a point that I wanted to mention. I think one thing that maybe we should all be very conscious of is that throughout these next couple months that we're looking at, the one resource that is going to make this all, I think, run smoothly is our ability to communicate with each other. And so not just those on this call, but I mean, you know, the steering committee members that are engaged in this process, as much as you can keep the stakeholders in your communities aware and involved with what you're doing and what you're considering, I think that's going to pay off in a big way, right? Because, you know, these meetings may sound kind of dry to somebody who's maybe not super excited about the process, right? But you're doing a lot of important work. And so as much as you can find ways to like message that to your stakeholders, I think, you know, you're definitely gonna feel more comfortable with the decisions you're making if you can vet them through those groups. And so I would just encourage anybody that if you need help with any of that, that's also, you know, what we're all here for. And so Rachel, I'm sure, can help with a lot of that. You know, we have a great team with the state and with CRPC that has a lot of resources to like make materials or just help with communications generally, help with outreach. And so if you feel like you don't have the time to invest in that and you really want to push that further, I think just let us know.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Will this committee be focusing on the capacity building aspect of any of this for the parishes?
So I think this group is going to certainly inform that. And to be honest, Chuck, some of that still looks pretty hazy. And I think that's just because we're still, at least on my end, I'm still kind of gathering information from y'all to figure out what are the needs. I know what's written into the grant is in terms of CRS and how folks might need some support on that. I think capacity kind of goes beyond that. And I've had folks say, you know, I want to be a CFM, but, you know, maybe we don't have the resources or the time or the materials or whatever it might be to be able to do that in a way that is going to make sure that they're successful in taking that exam. And so it's might even be something like that. Like I think OCD has talked about maybe perhaps paying for some of those exam fees. And then I know for myself, I haven't taken it yet. So I've offered to be a study buddy to people. And I've made some resources on my end. But Chuck, if you have some ideas, I would really love to hear some of those as well, because that's definitely work that's still being built out, if you will.
Well, one of the things when it comes to capacity building is we had a presentation earlier this year on natural channel design, and I think that's something that we need to help the parishes understand better. And I just say from my perspective is the Clean Water Act says that you protect the chemical, physical, and biological aspects of our waterways. So that physical aspect lends itself to hydrology. And there's been recent updates to the Clean Water Act that basically say that the EPA and the Corps of Engineers will look at sort of nature-based approaches as well, because they're understanding there's more importance to that. I know it was updated in, I think, maybe like 2016 and 2018. So
Yeah.
These are things that fit into the regulations.
Yeah, and that's real. Thank you for bringing that knowledge into the space, Chuck, because we know that we can't do anything without being compliant with those. It's pretty important. So I think kind of what I'm hearing from that too is maybe there's an opportunity to have some learning opportunities, some spaces where maybe through this group we can kind of serve as a network and a hub for, like you were talking about, Chuck, if you're giving a presentation like that, or if there's an opportunity for you to do that for this group, then I think something like that could be a good opportunity. And as I hear about different webinars, or as y'all hear about webinars, feel free to send those to me and I can send them out to the group, or you can, if you feel comfortable, send them out to this entire group as well. But yeah, thank you.
Well, I know I have some presentation documents, but they may not mean much without, you know, somebody giving a presentation and talking it through. And the group that presented to us would be a useful tool.
Yeah.
So, and if that was recorded, that might be something to, I don't remember if that webinar was recorded or not.
Cool. Well, maybe we could get that group to present, and then it could be something that's also opened up to I mean, not just Region 7, but I think that would be beneficial across the state. Chuck, is it okay if I offline with you and we talk a little bit about that group and kind of what they do, and maybe if they have, like you were talking about that being something that could be relevant, and then maybe if there are other key things that you've identified. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Does anybody else have anything to offer in terms of kind of ideas for capacity building? And there's a lot of things, y'all. It could even be like what Evelyn was talking about with outreach and engagement. I mean, I think there's a world of possibilities.
I agree. And it doesn't hurt to revisit this topic through the year, because this is really helpful, you know, to everybody. This is going to be helpful to other regions too, right? When we highlight potential like education training topics or like ways to design around capacity building. So I'll just encourage everybody, even if you don't think of something right this minute, if you have suggestions on that front, let's make sure we talk about it.
Yeah. Thanks, Evelyn. Okay. Well, I think we're done with the work plan, and we have about 30 minutes left, so we might actually end slightly early unless there's more topics of discussion. We've already done the movement to adopt. So chair and vice chair elections. So we kind of went over the roles and responsibilities of the chair and the vice chair, but I just wanted to make sure that it's stated very explicitly here again. And this is elected by simple majority vote during a regularly scheduled meeting of the committee, so like today. And both the chair and vice chair are voting members on all matters. Does anybody have a nomination or nominations?
Are we taking nominations for chair first? Taking them one at a time?
Yep, that's a great clarification. Thank you, Risa. So any nominations for chair? And if you want to, you can also put it in the chat box.
There's been a nomination from the floor for Ross Liner.
You accept that nomination, Ross?
Based on knowing Evelyn in her group and Rachel in your group, I would, because of the support that y'all provide. I'd be happy to.
Great. All right, thank you. Are there other nominations?
I move that the nomination for chair be closed.
I'll second that.
All right. So it sounds like we got Ross as the chair, unless there are objections. I'm hearing none. So thank you, Ross. Thank you, Devin, for making that nomination, and thank y'all for making the motion. I really look forward to working with you, Ross. And as you said, I'm definitely here to be that support role.
Devin, I appreciate it. And again, Rachel and Evelyn, I'll consider this role and take it because of your expertise. So again, I'm willing to do what I can. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Ross. Really looking forward to it. Do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Chuck Berger.
Oh, I heard Chuck, and who did that come from?
Ronnie.
Thanks, Ronnie. All right, do you accept the nomination? Oh. Sorry, go ahead.
I'll consider it. I can say that right now.
Okay, so I think I heard a nomination for Major Coleman, and I think Chuck said that he would consider it. Is that right?
Yeah.
We can't hear you, Chuck.
Great, and then
I
Major,
said, yes, I would consider.
oh, thank you, Chuck. Major, do you accept the nomination?
Yeah, yeah, I accept the nomination. I consider it.
All right, great. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, I'm not hearing any. So I think what I am going to do to facilitate this is, Risa, is it possible to set up a poll on the fly, or do you think that we should have folks? Oh, I might be able to set up a poll on the fly.
You could, but I will also state that I know Mike Enlow is now participating only by phone because he had to get to another location. So we would have to make sure we also incorporate people who are only participating by phone in our voting.
Okay, perfect. What I might do then is, if everybody is comfortable with this, I can actually just run down our list of folks on the phone and see if it's Chuck or Major. Does that sound okay?
Chuck.
Yeah. Hey,
Some people are already doing it by chat, in fact.
And by chat is great as well.
Before you go to vote.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Motion to close, Earl.
Thanks, Earl.
And Mike, if you can hear this, if you want to send your vote by text, if people are already voting by chat, you can text it to me directly.
Thanks, Risa. Did we have a second to close? Do you have a question, Chuck?
Yeah, so you've got the role somewhat laid out here. We'll be aware of meeting agendas ahead of time and facilitate the meetings with support. So what does that mean exactly? Do I have to round up everybody for agendas, that sort of thing?
I think, whoops. So I think yes and no. I think the majority of kind of like the, I would say probably like the, how do I want to say this? Like the nitty gritty work is probably going to be on my end. So what I'm envisioning is that based on the deliverables that we know that OCD's contractors have, based on the deliverables from LSU, et cetera, and kind of that work plan, I'm going to create a draft agenda, probably set up a call with the chair and vice chair. We'll talk through those items. And then if there are things that y'all think, you know, might be challenges or different opportunities in those conversations, then we'll discuss that. In terms of like kind of rounding folks up, I think having the burden of that on me is probably what makes the most sense. I might ask for support if some folks might seem to be more receptive to one of y'all. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, it sounds reasonable.
Well, and I know y'all's capacity is limited, and I am paid to do this full time and even more than full time sometimes. So.
I just saw Major vote for Chuck, so I think you may know where this is going.
Yeah. Yeah, I vote for Chuck.
Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've also heard from Mike. 9 votes in.
And that looks like a 10th here, huh? Okay, so that's definitely majority.
Yes.
Okay. Well, looks like we have Ross as the chair and Chuck as the vice chair. Thank y'all.
Great job.
And thank you to those who voted. Thank you to those who made the nominations. And thanks for just being engaged in this conversation. I'm definitely going to be following up with both of you just to see if you have any particular questions, and then to make sure that I'm getting a little bit of time on your calendar, maybe 30 minutes to discuss the agenda for July 28th. And yeah, if y'all need anything, just reach out.
I just like, I'd like this to be a collaborative process, with Rachel, Emily, Evelyn, I'm sorry, not Emily, Evelyn, Chuck, and myself. When we set these things up, we meet in advance. I don't want it to be, if possible, separate. If we can all be doing this together, that way we're all on the same page. There's no back and forth. We just, move this group forward in a consensus fashion, and, let's all work together.
Yeah. So we have Ross also for some astounding pep talks, which I really appreciate. Like the collaboration, yes, is necessary. And I think what you just said there, for me at least, was really powerful and kind of hit home a lot of the spirit of this group. So thank you again. Let me see. Oh, I had the list here. That might have been nice. Okay, so I think that's it for the business that we had. If there's anybody on the line that would like to make a public comment, please unmute yourself at this time, or you can use the chat pod. So we'll leave this open for a couple of minutes to see if we have folks that are ready for that.
One of your earlier slides, you had listed some common concerns. Can you put that back up?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just exit out of this and come back in, perhaps. Whoop. There we go.
Is that the one you were looking for?
Yeah.
Hey, this is Bobby Jo in Washington Parish. Is it possible to get a spreadsheet of the committee members that has, their name, their parish, and their contact information, so we have it all in one place?
Yes, I can send that to you, Bobby Jo. And we have, I think if you go to CRPC's website, that might be available for download, but let me double check. Either way, I'm going to send it to you via personal email.
Okay.
Hey, if you're sending that out, send it again to us if there's an updated version too. This is Earl.
Absolutely. I can send that out to everybody. And I think the two changes that have been made are James Stewart is now the East Louisiana rep, and then we have Mike Enlow for Ascension Parish, and then Ron Savoy has become the alternate. I think those are the two updates. So I'll make sure that everybody gets that post-meeting. Chuck, did you have any thoughts or ideas or comments on this particular slide? I'm going to make sure that I send out the slide deck to everybody as well. So we'll have the recording and the slide deck.
Well, several of these touch directly on with my day job and what some things we're trying to accomplish in the parishes. So all this about working together and improving quality of life and watershed work being necessary.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're trying to increase the capacity of understanding with local residents and citizens as well. So for watershed restoration. So.
Yeah, and I think a lot of folks on this call now, and especially you, Chuck, this is kind of lifelong work. And so thank you for all that you do. A lot of folks certainly hit on these points. It's capacity, it's necessary. It's not just flooding, it's really the way that we live. Let me see, we got a comment in the chat box from Liz Harris. Thank you, Liz. So Liz says, Liz Harris here, community volunteer. Where possible, I'd love to see the group recommend management technologies that also deal with floatables, AKA trash. Florida has over 300 cities doing this now, and Louisiana can do this too. Thank you, Liz, for that comment.
Well, that's something to think about too, is we have citizens that we're working with that, and you know, they're also part of Keep Louisiana Beautiful, and they're doing some very interesting things out there. And so that's something to possibly be able to share with the group, because as waterways get clogged with trash, that reduces their flood mitigation ability.
Yeah.
And I myself have been on many surveys collecting data out in the watersheds, and when you see near every bridge, you see 9 or 10 deer carcasses, washing machines, shopping carts, refrigerators, tires. One of the ways that may be a simple way is a maintenance program for the parishes, helping with the maintenance program to remove that type of stuff, because it's not only a flooding issue, it's a water quality issue, it's an aesthetics issue, and to me it would seem to be somewhat of a safety issue when it's piled up on the upstream side of bridges.
Yeah. Thank you, Chuck. And thank you, Liz. What I'm doing right now is I'm writing down something that I kind of call an idea marina. So these are things that didn't necessarily fit specifically into the agenda for today, but actually probably make a lot of sense for our future discussions about projects, about really like the capacity building conversation once again. So having these be in my notes for me is going to be helpful whenever we're calling back on previous items from previous meetings for future agendas, as well as thinking kind of overall strategy and needs for capacity building. So thank y'all. Liz also said, let me see.
That's one of the things that
go ahead.
That I would like to see considered as a round one type project that has, everybody agrees it's a good thing. There's no adverse impacts.
Thank you. Thank you, Chuck. Okay, Liz also said the latest one's like, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Vortec uses the water flow itself to filter our sediment to reduce out the need for dredging, then floatable. And then Honora Bieras, hello, Honora. I would like to see the incorporation of strategic land conservation incorporated into watershed management plans in all parishes. So I'm going to go ahead and make a note of that as well. Thank you, Honora. Because we will have that planning process once we have our coalition or coalitions or whatever the name of the body or bodies ends up being. Are there any other comments?
And a reminder that someone may be on mute and you would need to unmute yourself to be able to share at this time.
Yeah, sorry about that. So these are things that I would think we would need to consider being on a regional basis rather than a watershed basis. And maybe they carry over to other regions as well. And I would expect other regions would have good ideas that we would want to consider as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really great idea, Chuck. And one of my responsibilities is going to be to continue to communicate with folks in other regions. And I know that folks on this regional steering committee are also a part of other regions as well. And so if y'all are hearing different ideas or thoughts or practices that are happening in those other regions, let me know. because I think there's going to be a lot of, shared challenges and shared opportunities really across the state. Our problems are different and are also in some ways not different than other places. So I think that's a really, really great point, Chuck. Just the difference between what happens at a regional level versus a watershed.
So I guess, I would like to give everybody just a little bit of touch of my background if we got some time.
Yeah, we have about 15 minutes, 14 minutes actually.
It won't take that long. So I've been working at DEQ since 1996. Before that, I worked for DOTD doing noise studies. But at DEQ, I've done primarily water quality modeling and what they call total maximum daily loads, which a lot of the parishes are familiar with those. It's water quality based modeling usually. So I've got a long history with water quality data and flow and hydrology. I've been working with the Louisiana Watershed Initiative since around June or July of 2018 as part of the data and modeling tag and had some input into the projects tag. So I've done a lot of, when you develop a model for dissolved oxygen, you've got to design a survey plan, and we have a group that goes out and collects the data. So I'm familiar with all of that and seen a lot of the state's water bodies. We had a large consent decree that was completed in 2012 where the EPA was sued, and we helped them complete hundreds of total maximum daily loads. So we've got some experience all throughout the state. So I was part of a program basically that really shifted and was able to be part of the group that took that from the ground and got that accomplished. And so I'm really interested and excited to be part of this endeavor as well, and really take it as a compliment to be asked to be involved in it, So it hasn't been easy because it's on top of what I already had a full-time job, but it's exciting at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Chuck, for sharing that. And just the acknowledgement of capacity and also the importance of this work. I know that the folks that are on this call, y'all have very, very valuable and relevant experience in your professional careers, and then just being a person who has lived in Louisiana for a long time. And some of y'all have lived in the same parish that you're in right now your entire life. That's also an invaluable experience. So just thank y'all again. Really can't thank y'all enough. And it's really a privilege to be able to do this work, especially because I'm not from Louisiana. So what about Ross? So we've heard a little bit from our newly elected vice chair. Ross, do you want to share a little bit about yourself as the chair? Sure.
Born and raised in New Orleans, moved to St. Tammany Parish after Katrina. So 2008, I have a master's degree in urban and regional planning from UNO. So land use and transportation planning is basically my day-to-day job. Also a CFM. So looking forward to working with Chuck. I believe he had mentioned he's an engineer. So we have a land use planner, we have an engineer. I think we'll work well together in working in this region in a collaborative way so that we all benefit together. So I look forward to it. I'll probably learn a lot from Chuck, so glad he's here.
Me too. Thank you, Ross. I'm glad y'all are both here. Great. I think, looking at my timer, we still have a few more minutes. Are there any other topics of discussion, any other public comments from anybody?
So have we accomplished everything we set out to do today?
We sure have. Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'm the most. I made.
I think it's gonna take that long for a second.
Okay. Well, there we go. we are finished for today. I think, oh, there was one last thing. I just wanted to get a feel for y'all. Does the week of August 24th look open on y'all's end? If you can put in the chat box, yes or no, that would be great, because we'll be having a meeting in August, and I'm going to make sure that that date and time works for those in this group. So I'll be following up with that as well. So to close out, we also need to do the adoption of the May meeting minutes. So this is why I have slides and why I should pay attention to them.
I guess, Chairman, I should say, do I hear a motion to adjourn? So I'll go ahead and rephrase that.
This is Earl, motion to adjourn.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, so it looks like August 24th works. Well, great. I think I have some action items on my end. Once again, thank y'all for your time. Do we have a motion to adopt the May meeting minutes? Sorry.
Are you thinking morning time again?
I think that's up for discussion. Whatever will be preferable.
I do have something in the afternoon, so morning would be, at this same time slot would be best for me.
Okay. Are there other folks who feel similarly?
Morning's good for me.
Okay.
And just a reminder, our flood risk presentation date and time, that is July 28th, correct?
Yes, that's correct, Risa.
And that is really an important presentation for everyone. We all understand our own risk in our own parish, right? And having that understanding of the larger regional watershed risk has really been informative for the ones I've sat in on for sure at the different regions. And that's July 28th, I believe at 2 p.m. So for everyone on the call, please make sure that's on your calendars.
Thanks, Risa. Okay, those were the couple of items. So I'll be sending out date and time. Be sending out date and time to folks. And we can do the May minutes at the next meeting because we've already had that motion to adjourn. So thank y'all once again. I cannot continue to thank y'all enough for your time, especially given everything that's going on. So thank you. I hope that you have a really wonderful rest of your day. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. And I'm going to be following up with a few items. So if you need anything, you know where to find me. So, thank y'all. Bye.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks. Have a great day. All right. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a great day.
Bye.